You know those cars that everyone whispers about, the ones that feel more like myths than machines? The Lexus LFA is one of them. And if the standard LFA was already a unicorn, then the Nürburgring Edition. That's like a unicorn that trained for the Olympics, ran marathons on weekends, and casually lifted weights in its spare time. But here's the strange thing. For all its brilliance, for all the obsessive engineering and jaw-dropping performance, hardly anyone outside hardcore enthusiasts talks about it. Car meets? People brag about Ferraris, internet forums, endless debates about Lamborghinis. Car magazines, Porsches on every cover. But the Lexus LFA Nürburgring Edition? It's almost like a secret track hidden inside a video game. Only the dedicated ever find it. To really understand why this car is so special, you've got to rewind. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Lexus was best known for luxury sedans and quiet reliability. Comfortable cars, sure. Reliable, absolutely. But nobody in their right mind thought Lexus could build a supercar. Then, in 2010, they dropped the LFA and suddenly everyone had to shut up. It wasn't just fast, it was a rolling work of art. The centerpiece was a 4.8-liter, naturally aspirated V10 co-developed with Yamaha. And this wasn't your average V10. It revved to 9,000 RPM and did it so quickly that Lexus couldn't even use a traditional analog tachometer. The needle physically couldn't keep up. They had to go digital. Think about that. The engine revved faster than a gauge could track. That alone tells you this wasn't just a car. It was an engineering experiment pushed to the absolute edge. And then there was the sound. Oh, the sound. It wasn't a roar, and it wasn't a growl. It was a shriek, a razor-sharp wail straight out of Formula One's golden era. It wasn't just noise, it was music. Yamaha's own musical instrument division literally tuned the exhaust like it was a concert piece, crafting every note so it hit you in the chest, not just the ears. Other cars sound good. The LFA sounded alive, almost like it was breathing, like the engine itself had a soul. People didn't just hear it, they felt it. The sound wrapped around you, climbed under your skin, and stayed with you long after the car was gone. You could close your eyes and pick it out instantly, even among 1,000 engines. It didn't just announce speed, it announced presence. Now imagine Lexus looked at this already iconic car and said, okay, but what if we make it sharper? What if we build a version specifically designed for one of the hardest racetracks on Earth, the Nürburgring Nordschleife? That's where the Nürburgring Edition came in. Only 50 units were ever built. This wasn't a marketing stunt or a flashy limited edition badge. This was Lexus engineering a car purely for performance at the green hell. The Nürburgring Edition got an extra 10 horsepower, up to 562 horsepower. The suspension was stiffer, the ride height lower, and the aerodynamics more aggressive with carbon fiber front splitters, bigger canards, and a massive fixed rear wing. Even the tires were specifically chosen to stick like glue to the tarmac. It wasn't just an LFA with a body kit. It was a scalpel, precise, ruthless, built for one purpose. A car that stared down one of the most dangerous tracks in the world and said, "Let's dance." And it didn't just talk, it delivered. In 2011, the LFA Nürburgring Edition carved its way around the Nordschleife in 7 minutes, 14.64 seconds. To put that in perspective, that wasn't just quick, that was hypercar territory. This was an era when Porsche was stacking records like trophies, and Nissan's GT-R was stealing headlines as the giant killer of its time. And then Lexus of all brands, showed up and casually dropped a lap time that forced everyone to sit up. The car world didn't quite know what to do with that. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did, and in that moment, Lexus proved they could run with the giants. But here's what makes this car mysterious. Lexus didn't really brag about it. No flashy ad campaigns, no influencers hyping it up, no social media blitz. They quietly built 50 cars, handed them to customers who probably already had garages full of exotics, and let the car's reputation spread naturally. In a world obsessed with hype, the LFA Nürburgring Edition just whispered its greatness. And maybe that's why it feels like the forgotten masterpiece. Because if you know, you know. And if you don't, It passes quietly under the radar, overshadowed by the louder, flashier names from Europe. But for those who do know, it represents something extraordinary. It wasn't just Japan building a fast car, it was Japan building a supercar that could rival the best from Italy and Germany. Not on marketing, not on image, but on raw performance, precision, and soul. The Nürburgring Edition wasn't for flexing. It wasn't for Instagram clout. It was for people who cared about the drive, about the connection, about the purity of engineering. That's why it feels more like a love letter than a product. A love letter to the track, to engineering, to the joy of driving, and maybe even a love letter to the idea that sometimes perfection comes from the places you least expect. So if the LFA Nürburgring Edition was that good, why doesn't it get mentioned alongside the Ferrari LaFerrari, McLaren P1, or Porsche 918 Spider? Why isn't it on posters in every car kid's bedroom? Timing, for one. The Nürburgring Edition landed in 2011, just before the hybrid hypercar war kicked off. A couple of years later, the holy trinity of LaFerrari, P1 and 918, stole the spotlight. The world's attention shifted to hybrids, electrification, and insane horsepower numbers. In that noise, the LFA quietly slipped through the cracks. Then there's the badge. Say Ferrari, people immediately know it's special. Say Lamborghini, and jaws drop. Say Lexus, most people think of SUVs and luxury sedans. That lack of brand cachet hurt the LFA's recognition. It didn't matter how good it was, Lexus just wasn't seen as a supercar maker in the same way. But here's where things get interesting. Time has a funny way of rewriting reputations. Collectors today look back and realize the LFA Nürburgring Edition was ahead of its time. It was pure. Analog in spirit, digital in execution. A screaming V10 in an era just before downsizing and turbocharging became the norm. In hindsight, it feels like the last chapter of an era, and that makes it priceless. And collectors have taken notice. When it launched, the Nürburgring Edition cost about $445,000, an eye-watering number for a Lexus. But today, you'll need at least 7 figures to even think about owning one. Auctions have seen them climb into the multi-million range. The car that was once overlooked is now one of the most sought-after modern Japanese cars ever. And honestly, it deserves every bit of recognition it's getting now, because the Nürburgring Edition was never just about raw numbers on a spec sheet. Plenty of cars are blisteringly fast, plenty of cars can throw down impressive lap times. But what made this machine different was the experience. Sliding behind the wheel wasn't about flexing your bank account or showing off to strangers. It was about the deeply personal thrill of connection. It was about hearing V10 scream through a tunnel, a sound so pure and mechanical that it made the hair on your arms stand up. It was about feeling the chassis bite into corners, so precise it almost felt like it was reading your thoughts before you even moved the steering wheel. And above all, it was about the awareness, the rare, spine-tingling realization that you weren't just driving another exotic. You were piloting one of only 50 cars like it in the entire world. Every press of the throttle, every downshift, every echo off the walls reminded you that this wasn't just driving, it was history in motion. It's also one of the rare cars that blurred the line between machine and music. Most cars roar, some growl, but the LFA, it sang. It carried a note that wasn't just mechanical, it was emotional, almost human. And when Lexus unleashed the Nürburgring Edition, that song became a full opera. Louder, sharper, higher stakes, with every rev delivering drama like a crescendo on a stage. Even today, people who've been lucky enough to drive one don't rave about the horsepower figures first. They don't even lead with the lap times. What they talk about, almost without exception, is the sound. Think about it. How many cars do you know where the tachometer had to be digital because the engine revved too fast for a physical needle to keep up? How many cars had an exhaust note tuned not by engineers in a lab, but by Yamaha's musical instrument division, treating the exhaust system like a Stradivarius violin? And how many cars stormed the Nürburgring, posted a lap time quicker than most Italian exotics of its day, and then, almost deliberately, slipped into quiet legend? That's the Lexus LFA Nürburgring Edition. A car so rare, so misunderstood, that even now it feels like a secret handshake among true car enthusiasts. Mention it at a car meet, and the casuals might tilt their head in confusion. But the real gearheads, they'll just smile, maybe give you that subtle nod of respect, because they know exactly what you're talking about. They know it wasn't built to chase hype, it was built to leave a legacy. And maybe that's the beauty of it. In a world where cars are teased years in advance, leaked on social media, and overhyped to death before they even touch asphalt, the LFA Nürburgring Edition feels untouched by all of that noise. It stays quiet, exclusive, almost mythical. A piece of engineering art that doesn't scream for attention because it doesn't need to. The people who know already know. It mattered back then when it shocked the world with a lap time nobody expected. It matters now as collectors finally wake up to what it represents. And 50 years from now, when today's hypercars are outdated tech relics, the Nürburgring Edition will still matter. Not because it was the loudest, not because it was plastered on billboards, not because it chased clout, but because it was simply undeniably brilliant. A car built with soul, with obsession, with intent. And that kind of brilliance never fades, so the next time someone tells you Japan only built reliable sedans and tuner legends, remind them of this. Lexus built a supercar so good it humbled Ferrari owners, screamed like an F1 car, and lapped the green hell in record time, all while only existing in 50 examples. The LFA Nürburgring Edition isn't just the Japanese supercar nobody talks about. It's the Japanese supercar everyone should be talking about. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of the most mysterious masterpieces in car history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into hidden automotive legends, and share this video with a fellow gearhead who might have forgotten that Lexus once built a car that could stand toe-to-toe with the greatest supercars of all time. Because some cars are fast, some cars are famous, but only a few become legends.